She thought leaving would mean the end of their story, but his number was already on her phone before she reached the gate. Halfway through boarding, a single text lit up her screen. "You're not out of my sight yet." And when she looked up from the message, the man in the seat beside her was already smiling.
The Stonemount Ridge Hotel lobby was a study in quiet luxury. Polished marble floors that reflected the amber glow of gold-trimmed wall sconces, velvet armchairs angled just so, and the low hum of whispered conversations. It was the kind of place where money wasn't announced, it was assumed. Ella Cartwright fit right in. Her tailored blazer skimmed her frame with precision, and the gleam of her patent heels echoed faintly against the marble. She stood at the front desk with her phone in one hand, tapping a manicured nail against the screen as she pulled up her confirmation. "Cartwright, Ella, 1 King Deluxe Suite, paid in full," she said, her voice crisp, her gaze level. Next to her stood a man who didn't belong here, or so she thought at first glance. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black tactical jacket and dark jeans, his expression unreadable. His voice was low, even. "Rivers, Jamal. Same room, same confirmation code." The front desk manager, Trevor Lang, was a man who had mastered the art of smiling without meaning it. "I'm terribly sorry," he said, tone syrupy but strained. "There must have been a system glitch." Ella's brow arched. "Then fix it. Give me another room." "We are at full capacity. There's a major conference downtown. Every hotel in the area is booked." She glanced sideways at Jamal, as if expecting him to protest. He didn't. He just stood there, arms folded loosely, calm as stone. Her eyes narrowed. "You're okay with this?" "If you are," he said simply. She hated the way that answer disarmed her. Still, she wasn't about to share a room with a stranger, least of all a stranger who looked like he'd stepped out of a military base and into her weekend. "There must be something. I made this booking 6 weeks ago." "So did I," Jamal replied, his tone calm but leaving no room for argument. Trevor's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before snapping back into place. "Perhaps, for just a few hours, we can allow shared access to the room until another frees up. Separate keys, of course. A temporary solution." Ella crossed her arms. "Fine, but I want this resolved by tonight." He handed them each a key card, his gaze darting between them as if hoping one of them would back out. Neither did. They walked toward the elevators without speaking. The hush of the lobby seemed to follow them inside the mirrored lift, amplifying the silence. Ella fixed her gaze on the glowing floor numbers, refusing to meet the reflection of the man beside her. When the doors opened, she stepped out first, the wheels of her suitcase whispering across the plush hallway carpet. She slid her keycard into the door, pushing it open with the expectation of relief, until she saw it. One bed, king-sized, dressed in crisp white linens, the centerpiece of a room with sleek hardwood floors and a wall of glass overlooking downtown Denver. She stopped just inside the doorway, her spine stiffening. Jamal stepped in behind her, setting his duffel down quietly near the door. "Looks like one bed," he said evenly. "Obviously," she replied, the word sharpened to a point. She strode to the closet and flung it open. "There's a couch. You can take it." Jamal looked toward the sleek but narrow love seat near the window and raised an eyebrow. "You wouldn't last 5 minutes on that thing. Neither will I." Her arms folded again. "Then what do you suggest?" "I'll stay up." "You take the bed. I'll stay up. I've done worse in tighter quarters." She turned to face him fully now, skepticism in her gaze. "What are you, ex-military?" "Army Ranger." The words carried no swagger, no need to impress, just fact. Something in her faltered, a flicker she smothered quickly. "I don't need protection," she said. "Didn't say you did." The silence that followed was not hostile, but it was heavy. She rolled her suitcase to the side of the bed, sat down on the far edge, and pulled out her phone as if to build a wall between them. Jamal moved a chair closer to the window, sat down, and leaned back, his posture relaxed but alert. They didn't speak again for nearly an hour. The city outside glittered under a sky deepening to indigo. Ella lay stiffly under the hotel's pristine linens, phone in hand, pretending she was too absorbed in her screen to notice him. But every few minutes, her eyes drifted toward the silhouette in the chair. He sat upright, one leg crossed over the other, arms loose but ready. The faint glow from the city framed his profile, calm jawline, steady gaze fixed somewhere beyond the glass. "You're really going to stay up all night?" she asked, finally, her voice low. "Yeah," he replied, without moving. "That's ridiculous. I've done it before. Out of practice, maybe, but not impossible." She pushed herself up onto one elbow. "In the army, you said?" He nodded. "Afghanistan, 2 tours. Then I came back, started a cybersecurity firm with a buddy. Now I mostly babysit executives and patch their leaky systems." Her lips parted slightly. "You don't look like a tech guy." His gaze shifted to her, steady. "You don't look like someone who judges that fast." The heat rose in her cheeks. She looked away. "Sorry. That was unfair," he finished for her. "But I've heard worse." The quiet stretched again, this time softer. "My mom used to say people are mostly good at pretending they aren't afraid of each other," he said after a long pause. Ella blinked. "And what do you think?" "I think we all need better teachers." Her eyes dropped to the blanket gathered in her lap. "Why didn't you insist on taking the bed?" "Because I figured you wouldn't sleep if I did." She didn't answer, but the truth of it settled between them. She eased back down, the city lights dancing faintly across the ceiling. The last thing she saw before her eyes closed was him, still, steady, keeping watch like he said he would. And against her will, she slept more soundly than she had in months.
Morning found Denver glazed in hard light, the kind that flattens shadows and exposes seams. Ella stood in the hotel bathroom wrapped in steam, watching her reflection like it might confess something. Her robe was cinched tight. The robe belt trembled once in her hands before she stilled it. A junior staffer with a clipboard and an apology. No cancellations, still at capacity. They'd keep checking. Ella felt the complaint coil in her chest, but didn't release it. Complaints were oxygen in her world. Today, they felt like smoke. "I'll give you space," Jamal said, slinging his duffel onto his shoulder. "Don't bother," she snapped, then bit off the tail of the word. "I'm late anyway." He paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I hope your panel goes well." She didn't ask how he knew she had one. She didn't ask anything. He left, and the room changed temperature. The conference ballroom thrummed like a hive, people moving in lines that only they understood, coffee clutched like talismans, name badges blinking under chandelier light. Ella slipped into a back row of a cybersecurity breakout she'd half meant to attend and half meant to ignore. She opened her laptop, scrolled her slides for a later presentation, kept her face composed. On stage, the moderator conducted housekeeping with the bored cadence of a flight attendant. Then he brightened. "Our next speaker, CEO of FortiGate Cyber Defense, Jamal Rivers." Her spine straightened before she could stop it. He stepped into the spotlight in a charcoal blazer and jeans, clean white shirt, nothing desperate in the choices. The mic sat against his cheek like a secret he didn't need. His posture wasn't performative, it was prepared. "We secured beta, not headlines. But sometimes being invisible costs more than being seen." Slides flickered, breach timelines, attack vectors, the cold accounting of loss. He didn't sell fear, he named consequences. He explained failures like a medic explaining anatomy, precise, unsparing, never cruel. Ella watched the room watch him. People leaned forward because clarity feels like permission to understand. She hated and loved the sensation of her own judgments rearranging. There'd been a version of her that would have missed all this. She could see that version clearly, and for the first time, it repulsed her. Then the hand rose in the front row. David Gentry, smirk built into his face like an architectural feature. When you pitch to Fortune 500 clients, Mr. Rivers, do you find image matters more than credentials? A ripple of laughter rolled thinly through the seats. The old logic arrived, uninvited. Here it comes, the twist of the knife dressed as a question. Ella's jaw set. She'd been in rooms where men like Gentry used etiquette as a weapon. She'd even learned the footwork at their insistence. Jamal didn't bristle. He let silence lift its head and look around. Then, I find performance matters more than comfort zones. My clients aren't trying to feel good. They're trying not to get hacked. A few people clapped, relieved to be signaled back to reason. Others looked down, taking notes that said nothing. Gentry tilted his head, not satisfied. Image builds trust. Trust secures contracts. Jamal nodded once, as if categorizing a bug. Trust is measurable. We publish our detection times and post-incident retention rates in every proposal. We accept audits. We build a paper trail that outlives pitch decks. Image can open a door. Results keep it from being locked behind you. The moderator shifted, ready to cut to the next question, to smooth all ripples. Ella stood before she could decide not to. Mr. Rivers just gave more technical and ethical clarity in 10 minutes than we've had all morning, she said. Voice amplified by the hushed acoustics. 100 faces pivoted. If image is your metric, maybe you're in the wrong industry. A breath held by the room went audible. The moderator's smile flickered like a failing bulb. Gentry's smirk hardened, then broke into a laughter that wasn't laughter. Someone near the aisle murmured, "Jesus." Jamal looked toward the back. Not surprised, not grateful. Something steadier. Recognition. It landed between them like a bridge assembled midair. "Next question," the moderator said too brightly, and the session lurched onward, smaller now that the real thing had already happened. Ella sat down, blood loud in her ears. She hated public drama unless she started it. Today, it started itself. Jamal finished with a case study that offered a dull, competent ending, the kind that paying clients trust. He didn't reference the exchange again. He didn't need to. When the applause came, it felt like the room clapping for its own relief. He stepped off stage and threaded through the aisles with a practiced economy of a man who has been watched and measured before. He passed her row without slowing. For a heartbeat, he stopped at the end of it, lifted his eyes to hers, and gave the smallest nod. Not thanks. Acknowledgement. She returned it like a countersignature. The corridor outside the ballroom smelled like espresso and printer ink. Ella pretended to read an email. What she was actually doing was trying to get her breathing to match her values. She didn't want to be the person who only speaks when cameras are on, or the one who narrates courage instead of paying for it. "Miss Cartwright." Jamal's voice arrived beside her shoulder, not startling, just present. He stood with his badge flipped over so the lanyard hid his name, as if identity should be earned in every new conversation. "Mr. Rivers," she said, too formal, then softened. "Nice talk." A corner of his mouth tugged. "You punctured a bubble back there." "It needed puncturing. Punctures make messes. I bill by the hour for those." A silence that wasn't empty floated up between them. The corridor's traffic streamed around their island. "I was out of line this morning," she said, "at the room. The assumptions." He nodded once, accepting and declining to replay the details. "You said what you said. You're saying something else now." "I don't want credit for course correction," she said, surprising herself with the ferocity of it. "I want to change directions." "Then change them," he said. No lecture, no pat on the head, just weight handed back for her to carry. A young man with a tablet materialized. "Mr. Rivers, press wants a quote about your, His eyes slid toward Ella,
caught between curiosity and caution. Jamal's expression didn't move. "No comment," he said easily. "We don't secure headlines." When the handler left, he looked back at Ella. "There's coffee," he said, nodding toward a satellite bar. "If your schedule can be bribed." Her schedule could always be bribed by the right thing. They walked. The second-floor lounge had floor-to-ceiling windows and chairs designed to keep meetings short. They took a table near the glass, Denver laid out like circuitry beyond it. The barista handed over 2 paper cups with names spelled wrong on purpose. "You saved me an hour of sleep last night," Ella said finally, thumb circling the lid seam. "I did what I said I'd do," Jamal replied. Why? She hated the nakedness of it, hated more that she needed the answer. "Because the hotel didn't earn my trust, and because you wouldn't have slept if I'd taken the bed." Her laughter was brief, grateful, and irritated at once. "You keep calling me out without calling me out." He shrugged. "I was trained to observe." "Army?" He nodded. 2 tours. Then I came back and learned how to watch different kinds of doors. "And you built 40 Gate?" "With a friend who knows how to sell without lying." "Is that possible?" "Depends what you're selling." She looked out at the city, at the tiny toy cars sliding the grid beyond it. "I've built a life on doors that open because I speak the right way, and on slamming them behind me so I don't have to hear who gets left in the hall," she said softly. She hadn't planned to say any of it. The words surprised her mouth. He absorbed them without changing shape. "You can stop doing that," he said. "I can lose for doing that." Both can be true. The coffee cooled between them. A notification buzzed her phone across the tabletop like a trapped insect. Calendar reminder for a partner luncheon where soft cruelty disguised itself as mentorship. She wanted to ignore it. She didn't. She clicked it away. A shadow fell over the table. Gentry. Of course. "Strong words in there," he said to Ella. Smile lacquered. Always refreshing to hear.
Passion from legal. Dangerous in-house, but refreshing. She stood, leveling her height with his. "Strong questions in there," she said, not smiling. Always refreshing to hear bias say its name. His laugh hit the glass and died. "I admire conviction," he said, eyes moving to Jamal as if concluding something. "You should come to our sponsor suite later. We're discussing how vendors present to boards. Optics, tone, style." "We're discussing results," Jamal said, voice calm enough to cut. "But you enjoy your mirrors." Gentry's smirk thinned. He touched his badge as if to verify his rank, then left. Ella felt her pulse try to sprint. Jamal's gaze stayed on the window until the adrenaline decided to go home. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I wasn't doing it for you," he said. And then, so she wouldn't misunderstand, "I was doing it for the truth." She exhaled like a confession. "Good." They drifted back toward the escalators, unhurried in a place built for urgency. At the landing, the crowd thickened. Photographers, bored PR reps, a podcaster clutching a handheld recorder like a live bird. Jamal's lanyard had flipped again, his name hidden. But it didn't matter. People carried his outline already. "You go into the next block?" he asked. "I have to prep a panel on risk and governance," she said. "I plan to use the word courage and then immediately regret it." "Say it anyway." "You always follow your own advice?" "I try. Some days I follow it late." The escalator hummed. She stepped on, he beside her. Their shoulders didn't touch, but the gap was measured. "You ever—" She stopped, caught between the personal and the permissible. "You ever know you were wrong in real time and keep going anyway because the story you were in demanded it?" "Yes." No embellishment. "Then I learned how to exit the story." She looked at him, at the steady profile, the posture that didn't seek approval to exist. She said, "Teach me." He didn't smile, not quite. "Start by naming the story out loud.
then walk a different way. They reached the bottom. He stepped aside to let a cluster of attendees pass. "I've got a private client session, then a debrief, then probably a quiet corner with no microphones." Same, but with more microphones. They stood there, the air full of other people's plans. He extended a hand like an ordinary thing. She took it like a vow. "Miss Cartwright," he said. "Mr. Rivers." They released. She turned toward her room to prep. He turned toward his war made of code. Ella didn't look back until the crowd forced her to. Then she caught him once more, already moving, absorbed into the living blueprint of the conference. Something inside her shifted again. Not dramatic, just permanent. Doors would open today because she said the right words. She would choose which ones to close and which to keep swinging on their hinges until policy and mercy meant the same thing. She walked, and with every step the story she'd been telling about herself loosened its grip. By afternoon, people would remember the exchange in the ballroom as a spicy moment in a long day. By evening, no one would remember the junior staffer's apology at the hotel door. But Ella would remember the watchful silhouette by the window, the way a stranger kept a promise without spectacle, and a room of professionals who learned, for a breath, how to listen. She'd start naming the story out loud. She'd practice the exit. And, God help her, she'd walk a different way. By the time Ella made it back to the hotel, Denver's skyline was wrapped in evening amber. The sun had dropped low, spilling long shadows across the lobby's marble floor. She swiped her keycard and pushed open the suite door, uncertain what version of Jamal she'd find, if he was even there. He was, sitting on the edge of the narrow couch, his phone in one hand, duffel still by the door like he was ready to move at a moment's notice. His eyes flicked up when she entered, unreadable. "Didn't expect you to come back," he said. She set her laptop bag on the desk with more care than she meant to. "Didn't expect to speak up for you either, but here we are." A corner of his mouth tugged upward. Not a smile, not yet, but close. "You didn't have to, but I'm glad you did." She toed off her heels, walked to the minibar, and pulled out a bottle of water. "I was out of line this morning," she said, turning the cap slowly. "I know." Her head snapped up. "You're not going to let me off the hook?" "Nope." His tone was light, but anchored with truth. She stared at him for a long moment, then cracked a tired smile. "Fair." The silence that followed wasn't hostile. It was heavier in a different way, like the air had settled into honesty. Jamal leaned back slightly, resting one arm along the couch. "Truth is, I didn't sleep last night because I didn't trust the hotel." Her brows lifted. "And? And after a while, I realized I wasn't sure I trusted you either." It wasn't an accusation, it was simply fact. She felt the words settle between them, sharp-edged and clean. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I got that." Her phone buzzed on the desk. She ignored it, grabbed the takeout menu from the nightstand, and tossed it on the coffee table. "You hungry?" "Sure." An hour later, 2 half-eaten takeout boxes sat abandoned, steam curling faintly from their contents. They sat on the floor with their backs against the bed, knees drawn up, shoulders angled toward each other without quite touching. Ella traced the edge of her water bottle label with her thumb. "I used to think success would fix everything," she said, voice low. "That if I played by the rules, climbed the ladder, memorized all the right words, I'd finally be respected. But it's never enough." He looked at her, calm and unreadable. "Because the rules weren't written for you. Not really." She let out a breathy laugh, no humor in it. "And here I thought you were the one people underestimated." I got used to it. People assuming I was security, or asking if I was in the wrong room. You stop being surprised after a while, but it still stings." Her eyes softened. "I'm sorry for how I treated you that first night." "I know." He said it gently, without victory. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, the hum of the city filled the gaps between breaths. She asked finally, "Do you ever miss it, the army?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "The clarity out there. You knew who had your back. Here, everyone smiles, but no one means it." Her gaze lingered on his face, the slight shadow of stubble along his jaw. You stayed up all night for a woman who treated you like a mistake. I stayed up for someone who didn't know better yet, he said it, correcting her. Her throat tightened. Their eyes locked, no masks between them for the first time. The air thickened. Not with attraction, exactly, but with something more fragile. Understanding. No kiss came. Not yet. Instead, Jamal shifted to the couch later, stretching out for the first time since he'd arrived. Ella lay in bed, turned toward him as watching his breathing slowed, the guarded lines of his body softening into sleep. She thought about how strange it was that she trusted him to protect her before she trusted him to rest in the same room. Morning came, sharp and bright. Ella stood at the coffee maker in a hotel robe, cradling a steaming mug and looking out at the skyline. Behind her, Jamal stirred, rubbing the back of his neck as he sat up. "You slept," she said without turning. "I did." The warmth in his voice was small, but real. For a moment, they just stood in the easy quiet, as if both were afraid to break it. Her phone buzzed against the counter, a message from her firm. "Brent Collier wants a meeting. Heard about your panel moment." Her stomach sunk. She handed Jamal his coffee, masking the tremor in her hand. "You okay?" "I think I'm about to be told that ethics don't mix well with ambition." "They never have," he said, taking a sip. "Doesn't mean you have to listen." The hotel's executive lounge was all chrome and glass, with the hollow echo of conversations not meant for the public. Brent Collier didn't waste time. "We like you, Ella. You're sharp. But this allyship thing, it's not your fight. You don't have to burn bridges for people who will never be able to return the favor." Her nails dug lightly into the armrest of her chair. "People," she repeated. "Or clients." Brent's smile didn't falter. "Your future here depends on understanding the difference." When she returned to the room, she dropped her bag on the bed. Jamal looked up from his laptop, eyes scanning her face. "Well," she said, lips tight, "I'm not getting promoted." "You okay with that?" "Not yet, but I will be." His gaze stayed steady. "You're braver than you look." She smirked faintly. "So are you." They didn't need to say it, but both knew. Some lines had been crossed, and neither of them intended to step back over them. By nightfall, they were back on the rooftop terrace. Denver glittered beneath them like a field of stars that had fallen to earth. "I posted about it," Jamal said without turning. "About the room?" "Yeah, just facts. No hashtags, no outrage." "Good. Not sure if it was brave or dumb. Probably both." The wind tugged at her hair. "I offered me the promotion, said I could take it quietly if I dropped the activism." Jamal let out a dry laugh. "Let me guess. They called it risky optics." "Exactly." They stood there in silence, both high above a world that had already decided what boxes they belonged in. "You ever think," he said, "that we're not supposed to be in the same room, let alone in the same story?" Ella turned toward him. "Then why does it feel like I've never been more in the right place?" Something in his expression cracked, barely, but it was enough. "No one's ever said that to me." "Then it's about time someone did." This time there was no hesitation. She stepped closer, her hand brushing his jacket. His fingertips grazed her wrist. The kiss when it came was soft but certain. No fear, no apology, just connection. And for the first time, Ella didn't care what anyone would say about it.
Morning crashed into the suite like a verdict. The skyline was bright and pitiless, the sun unblinking. Ella woke with the steady afterglow of a decision and the ache of what it would cost. The bed was warm where she'd slept. The couch was a geometry of rumpled fabric and the faint shape of Jamal's body from hours before. He stood at the window already, hands in the pockets of his navy zip-up, staring at Denver like it had asked him a personal question. "Coffee?" she asked, voice husky. He nodded without looking back. "Please." They moved around each other with a new ease, two people who had run out of reasons to pretend. She poured, handed him a cup, felt the soft brush of his fingers against hers and the quiet spark that came with it. No fanfare. Just, yes. Her phone buzzed. Meeting moved up. Executive Lounge, 10, Brent. A second buzz. New sender. Press request for FortiGate appearance after lunch. Maya. Her PR contact had found his number somehow. And then a third.
Facilities still have capacity. Shared room continues. Front desk. Ella snorted. Of course. What? Jamal asked. Apparently we're still roommates, she said, then lifted the screen. And I've got my tribunal at 10. He read her face like a dashboard. You ready? No, she said, surprising herself with the honesty. But I'm going anyway. The executive lounge wore neutrality like armor. Soft gray chairs, quiet carpet, views that looked expensive enough to be soothing. Brent Collier sat at a table near the window, a folder laid out like a chess opening. He didn't stand. Ella, he said, a parody of warmth. Sit. She did. Her hands were calm on the table. She wanted them to tremble. They didn't. We need to talk about yesterday, your performance in the ballroom. My defense of a speaker who was being undermined for reasons unrelated to his expertise? He smiled the way surgeons smile right before they cut. Optics. We can't have our associates becoming activists in sponsor sessions. I didn't chant, she said softly. I spoke. Same difference to the men who pay for our dinners. She felt the old reflex. Make it small, make it smooth, get out clean. The reflex met the newer thing inside her, the one that had been waking up since the first night in the room. Then maybe we need different dinners. Brent's eyes cooled. I'll be plain. A promotion is on the table, with conditions. Drop the allyship, mute the conscience, smile. And focus, he finished, as if she'd mispronounced the word. You're valuable here. Don't waste that on causes that won't remember your name. Ella thought of the rooftop wind, the way Jamal's guard had lowered when she told him she felt, finally, in the right place. She thought of his steadiness at the window, of the way he slept only when she was safe first. She thought of the sweet door knock, the staffer's small apology, and the night she'd used a stranger as a mirror for her fear. My value, she said, isn't a trick I do for men who want to keep their optics clean. Brent's jaw tightened. Careful. Or what? You'll rescind the promotion? She leaned forward, voice level. Keep it. He blinked. There it was, the surprise she never got tired of watching arrive in the eyes of men who expected compliance as a return on investment. Think this through, he said, almost gentle. You walk out and it won't be noisy, no martyrdom, just quiet. Emails that never get answered, calls that never return. You'll vanish. I'll build somewhere that answers back. And I won't vanish. You'll just stop looking. He closed the folder. A small, pleased smile touched his mouth like a teacher grading a predictable essay. So noted. She stood. One more thing, she said. When a room tests a black expert on image, it's not a neutral question, it's code. If we can't say that in a law firm, then I'm not practicing law, I'm laundering it. Brent's jaw flicked to the window, as if the city might offer him an out. It didn't. Good luck, Ella, he said, and made it sound like a sentence. She laughed without waiting to be dismissed. Back in the suite, Jamal was at the small desk, laptop open, posture a study of readiness. He looked up once and knew everything he needed to know. How'd it go? He asked anyway. I'm unemployed by choice, she said, breath leaving her like a laugh that hurt. He nodded slower than a nod, more like a vow. I've got a thing in an hour, but I'll walk you down if you need air. They walked. The elevator hummed around them. In the mirrored walls, she saw a woman she would have disliked a week ago and felt an odd bloom of pride. The lobby's hush had sharpened. A few heads turned, faces half remembering a conference clip. Near the revolving doors, a woman in her 50s detached herself from a cluster and approached her. Miss Cartwright, she said. I'm Dana Alvarez, partner at Coyle & Shaw. Saw you yesterday. If you're making changes, we should talk. Ella blinked. The universe had a sense of timing she didn't trust. I am making changes, she said. I want mentorship built into the job, not just to perform in rooms, but to open them. Dana smiled, the way trees do when they've been watered. Come by after lunch. No promises, no pressure, just a conversation. Thank you, she said. She felt Jamal's quiet glance beside her. Good. She had not done this for a reward, and yet there it was,
An echo of the rooftop line. The right place. They stepped outside. The air was thin and bright. Traffic wore its weekday face. On the curb, a ride-share idled for someone else, and the driver leaned over to squint at them, then offered a small, respectful nod when Jamal met his eyes. Not deference. Recognition. My PR wrangler wants me to meet a reporter. They smell blood in, double booked at a luxury hotel. They want a headline. What do you want? He looked at her. A statement that doesn't turn into a slogan. Then say the facts and refuse the frame. You do that better than anyone I've met. He smiled, real time this time. Walk with me? They cut along the side street toward the conference center annex, where a small knot of people waited by a branded backdrop, a vlog host with two large teeth, two camera ops, a woman with a clipboard and headset looking for angles. Jamal greeted them with the calm of a man who had already decided what he would and wouldn't give. Mr. Rivers, he beamed, we've heard wild things. He said Mike aimed like a spear. About the mix-up at your hotel. Do you think this reflects a broader problem of discrimination in... Here's what happened. A double booking, 2 confirmed reservations. The hotel handled it poorly at first, then tried to make it right. I posted the facts. I don't need anyone to be punished. I need systems that prevent the same glitch from happening again, especially when glitches have a pattern. The host blanked, thrown off his script. So you're not calling for... I'm calling for competence and for people to get the rooms they pay for. Is it true a prominent attorney stood up for you at a panel? She stood up for the truth, he said, glancing at Ella only long enough for her to feel it. That's the story. The host pivoted, the handler called time. The camera op gave a tiny, grateful thumbs up. Not for clicks, maybe for relief. Ella felt something unclench in her chest. It wasn't triumph. It was alignment. They ducked through a service corridor to escape the second wave of microphones. On the far side, the atrium was almost empty, sunlight fanning through glass ribs and pooling across the tile. They stopped there like people who had agreed to the same map without needing to trace it. You handled that, she said. You told me to refuse the frame. I shrugged. You were already doing it. I just put language to it. He studied her for a beat. What do you want, Ella? Not today. The long thing. She thought of the law when she first loved it. Statutes like scaffolding for a house that could keep weather out and warmth in. She thought of the years she'd spent leasing that house to people who wanted the windows painted neutral and the doorbell removed. I want to practice law like it matters. I want to mentor the next version of me so she gets there faster and doesn't bleed as much on the way. I want rooms that don't require a costume. And personally? He asked, gentle. She didn't flinch. I want to be with someone who doesn't need saving and doesn't ask me to disappear to love him. Her mouth twitched. Your turn. I want to build a company that makes itself unnecessary, to train teams so well our clients outgrow us, to hire kids who have never been invited and make them owners. And personally, I want to be the kind of man who keeps watch without making it about his ego, who sleeps when he's safe and when she is. Heat rose behind her. Eyes came back. You already are. His phone buzzed. He silenced it. I have 10 minutes. Then let's spend them, she said. They walked the perimeter of the atrium slowly, like people who had rediscovered the usefulness of quiet. A pair of students in conference badges whispered as they passed, that's the guy from the clip, but didn't intrude. A janitor polishing a steel column nodded at them like a priest, noticing 2 congregants who had finally learned how to pray. At the exit they stopped. I'll be on the rooftop
Again tonight, he said, after the last session. I might have a meeting, she said. Coyle and Shaw. Good, he said, and it was a benediction. If you can't make it, I'll understand. I'll make it, she said, surprising them both. Evening draped the city in copper and violet. The rooftop wind was gentler, a palm on the crown of the day, smoothing it down. Jamal stood at the railing with his jacket open, the Denver lights laid out in lattice below.
He heard the door before he saw her and felt the small private relief that comes when hope doesn't embarrass you. "You came?" he said. "I did," she answered, crossing to him. "Coital and Shaw want me to build a mentorship track, a pipeline." They said the quiet part out loud. "We don't know how. Will you teach us?" His mouth quirked. "Will you?" "I will, on my terms." They stood shoulder to shoulder, palms on cool metal. The air tasted like first snow in a city that hasn't earned it. "They offered me a TV hit," he said. "Primetime panel about corporate bias in hospitality." "And?" she asked. "I declined," he said. "Told them to invite a hospitality worker who's lived it. I'll take a call with their head of operations instead." She smiled. "You're allergic to fame. I'm immune to misdirection." Silence deepened, companionable and whole. He turned toward her, hand finding the line of her jaw with a caution that wasn't uncertainty, it was reverence. She leaned in, not to be saved, not to prove a point, but to meet him where truth lived. The kiss was unhurried, like people with time. When they parted, the city kept breathing. "We're not built for easy," she said. "No," he agreed. "We're built for right." "Can we do both?" she asked. "We can do one and then teach the other. That's how it spreads." Below them, sirens didn't wail. They threaded the night like stitches. Above them, a plane's red eye slid toward elsewhere. Between, two people stood where a story had asked them to kneel and chose instead to stand. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," he echoed. They didn't promise more than that. They didn't need to. The promises were already in motion, quiet, precise, defiant as breath. Morning came soft and ordinary. No rooftop vistas, no conference chatter, just the smell of coffee and frying bacon from somewhere down the block. Ella stood at the Sweets coffee maker, in jeans and a hoodie, hair pulled into a loose ponytail. She hadn't worn this version of herself in public in years. Behind her, Jamal emerged from the bathroom in a navy zip-up and clean white tee, toweling his hands. For once, he looked less like a man on alert and more like one simply present. "Breakfast?" he asked. She grinned. "If it involves eggs and coffee that isn't brewed by a machine pretending to be fancy, yes." The diner they found wasn't on any hotel concierge list. It had cracked leather booths, sun-bleached menus, and a waitress named Sandra whose smile didn't adjust itself based on your watch or your shoes. Sunlight poured through wide windows, striping the tables with gold. Sandra came over, pen poised. "Y'all ready to order?" "Pancakes," Jamal said. "Extra butter." "And eggs, scrambled. Please," Ella added. Sandra nodded and left without commentary. The absence of judgment was startling in its own way. Ella glanced around. An elderly black couple sat 2 booths over, sharing a newspaper. A white mechanic in a grease-stained uniform ate alone at the counter. Nobody stared. "I used to think places like this didn't exist anymore," she murmured. "They exist," Jamal said, stirring his coffee. "We just don't always believe we belong in them." Her eyes softened. "I think I judged you the minute I saw you, not because I hated you, just because I didn't know better." He didn't flinch. "But you're learning." "I am." Their food arrived, steaming and fragrant. They ate slowly, conversation drifting between comfortable silences and small bursts of laughter. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was a simple breakfast, in a place where nothing felt unsafe and everything felt possible. Later, the hotel lobby looked different. Not because the velvet armchairs or marble floors had changed, but because they had. Ella sat in one of the chairs near the fireplace, laptop open, inbox overflowing with subject lines, "Saw your panel moment, legal inquiry, DEI panel invite, interested in collaboration." She closed the lid, suddenly unwilling to live only inside other people's requests. Behind her, Jamal emerged from the bathroom, in a navy zip-up and clean white tee, toweling his hands. For once, he looked less like a man on alert and more like one simply present. You serious? Yeah, we can handle that contract. No, we won't white label. FortiGate takes full credit. Appreciate you saying that, man. Really. He hung up just as she approached. More good news? She asked. Let's just say speaking up had ripple effects. We just doubled our client base. Her eyebrows rose. Impressive. What about you? I got an offer. Different firm, better culture. Told them I'll sign only if I can help build the next generation of voices, not drown them. He leaned in slightly, the air between them easy now. Sounds like you found your lane. Maybe I just stopped running from it. They moved towards the seating area together. Carla, the desk clerk from their first night, passed by and gave a small nod to them both. Jamal returned it. Funny, Ella said as they sat. A double booking felt like the worst thing that could have happened. Still might be, he teased. She nudged him with her shoulder. You're impossible. I'm patient. Ask my war buddies. They both knew their paths were still separate. Different cities, different battles. But for now, they sat in stillness, knees brushing, letting the quiet say what words couldn't. Outside, a car pulled up to the hotel's curved glass entrance, hazard lights blinking in the morning sun. Ella stood with her suitcase beside her, hands in the pockets of her coat. Jamal stood a few steps back, duffel over one shoulder. They hadn't spoken much since breakfast, not out of discomfort, but because nothing they could say would make the goodbye easier. Well, she said, adjusting the strap of her laptop bag, this has been something else. Definitely not your average hotel stay, he said, smiling softly. She laughed, but it faded quickly. I meant what I said, about choosing better, about walking forward, not backward. I know. And I meant it when I said you didn't need saving. Her head tilted, eyes searching his. That first night, you said you'd stay up, keep me safe. He stepped forward, close enough for the air between them to shift. And I did. You did more than that, she said, voice catching. You made me look at myself. His expression softened, the first visible crack in his steady armor. I didn't expect any of this. I didn't either. The driver honked once. Ella turned towards the car, then paused. So, what happens now? He glanced down, then back up. I don't know, but I'm not going anywhere just yet. She reached for his hand, just fingers at first, then all of it. His grip was warm, grounding. He didn't let go until she had to. As the car pulled away, she looked back through the glass. He was still standing there, not guarding the room anymore, but guarding something else. Her story. The ride to the airport felt longer than it should have. She scrolled through her phone half-heartedly, messages piling up. Somewhere between the downtown exit and the freeway, she stopped pretending to read them. Her reflection in the window stared back, tired but not brittle, changed in a way that couldn't be undone. At the airport, she checked in early, wandering through the terminal, until she found a quiet gate. From her bag, she pulled a small leather notebook, one she'd bought months ago, but never used. She opened to the first page and wrote, Better Teachers. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't even a plan. It was a reminder. Back at the hotel, Jamal watched the car disappear into the Denver morning before heading upstairs. He had calls to make, contracts to sign, and a flight in 2 days. But for now, he let himself sit in the suite for one last hour. The bed was neatly made, the couch still held the faint imprint of where he'd slept. On the desk, the takeout menu from their second night sat folded, a faint grease stain marking one corner. He left it there. His phone buzzed. Media request. NBC panel on diversity and tech. He almost deleted it, then thought of Ella's voice on the rooftop. Refuse the frame. He replied with a single line. I'll do it if we can talk about results, not optics. 2 days later, their inboxes would cross. Hers with an update about her new role, his with a thank you for speaking out without making it about himself. Neither email would say much, but both would end the same way. Let's keep in touch. For now, in their separate cities, they carried the same quiet truth. One unexpected room, 2 people who should never have been booked into the same story, and a world that looked just a little different than it had 3 nights before.